Asiamet Resources is advancing its BKM copper project in Indonesia. Following delivery of its updated feasibility study, the company has formally commenced both a lender-led project finance process and a strategic investor process led by top-tier firm Grant Samuel. Now, I'm joined now by Mudit Goenka and Darryn McClelland, both at the top level of management at Asiamet, and they're going to be talking about what's been going on lately at the company. So, Darryn, can you provide us with an update on what progress has been made on advancing the BKM project towards development since the release of the updated feasibility study in May?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, Alistair. It's good to be
Morning.
with you. Yeah, so we've been focusing on two main work streams. One is the financing work stream, and the other is an operational optimization work stream. On the financing side, been focusing on the project lending aspect with the banks and working through due diligence processes with them. Mudit will talk a little bit more about that moving forward. We've also, as you mentioned, we've kicked off a strategic investment process led by Grant Samuel, a top-tier firm based out of Melbourne and Hong Kong. So looking forward to advancing that process for the equity side of BKM. Also been doing some work on some operational optimization, some flow sheet optimization post release of the feasibility study. Also been working on an important aspect, the development of a limestone resource close to BKM, something which we flagged in the feasibility study. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. And also been working on the appointment of a project director. So I'll be keen to just expand on that a little bit further as well. Thanks.
Great. So, Mudit, you recently joined Asiamet. For investors, viewers, and listeners who don't know you or your background, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Thanks, Alistair. I joined Asiamet. It's been kind of slightly over 6 months now. Prior to that, I spent 10 years with Bank of America Merrill Lynch, doing investment banking for them. That included M&A, debt, and equity funding. I was based in London for the first 7 years, and the last few years was in Singapore. While I was there, it was essentially looking to raise funding for clients, which were primarily in the natural resource space, and also a few other sectors, and also helping them with M&A and strategic investor engagements. Prior to that, I was in the asset management field, so essentially being in finance and investments kind of over 15 years now.
So, you are quite heavily involved in this strategic investor process, as I understand it. Tell us a little bit about what's happening there.
Sure. So as you saw, we've appointed recently. We made the announcement of appointment of an advisor. We flagged, we mentioned during the investment meet a few months ago that we'd been receiving quite a bit of inbound interest, both prior to our release of the feasibility study and post. And based on that, we thought it would be helpful to run a structured and a competitive process to see who would be probably the optimal partner to bring in to help with the development of the project. And as such, we wanted to appoint an advisor, a specialist advisor, to help us run that process. We've appointed Grant Samuel. They are a specialized boutique advisory firm based out of Australia and Hong Kong, and they've specialized in natural resources, have an excellent track record in the natural resource space of helping clients with raising funding, with investor engagement, with strategic investment engagement, especially. And if you see their client list, they work with big names like the BHPs of the world, but also in the region, they worked with players like Gare, and etc. So clearly, a leading firm who we thought would help us get the optimal and successful outcome. So the process is live now. The strategic investor engagement process is live. Grant Samuel, of course, running that process quite tightly. A lot of work has been going on in the background in terms of engagement and preparation. I won't be able to speak a lot in terms of detail given the confidentiality here in terms of names, etc. But I can assure that it's keeping us very busy, and hope that we can progress fast and reach some milestones, and we'll share those updates with the market as and when appropriate.
I mean, that's very encouraging to hear, I guess. You've employed an advisory firm that's got a track record of advising some big names in the mining sector. But I mean, I suppose it's quite a big project, really, isn't it? In one sense, I mean, BKM overall it could end up being massive in time. Now, tell us a little bit about how you plan to finance the development of BKM. What I'm thinking here about the debt ratio, debt to equity or debt and any other kind of finance. Have you got specifics at this point, or is it too early?
Yeah, so I think the way we're looking to finance is a mix of debt and strategic equity is kind of how we're approaching at this point. Of course, there are other pools of capital, but I think primarily the focus is on these two pools of capital. We've just spoken about the strategic equity or the strategic investor bit. I think on the debt side, that's another process which we can talk about what's happening there. In terms of how that split looks like or the ratios, I think a bit too early. But in these kind of processes where you're looking to do project finance, typically you're talking about a range of, I would say, 50 to 60% is where people would try to max out or the debt percentages. I mean, again, we've seen it lower in terms of 30 to 40 and sometimes as high as kind of 60 to 70. We are, of course, in conversations and we'll see what makes the most sense from an optimal split. So yeah, we'll share those as and when we get more we progress further around those discussions.
Well, I look forward to hearing further details then. Darryn, if I could switch to you now, perhaps we could talk a little bit about the project itself, what's happening on the ground. We know you've passed some decent milestones in the recent past, but what's happening now? Are you optimizing? And can you tell us a little bit more about any other things you're doing?
Yeah, sure, Alistair. In delivering the feasibility study, there were several opportunities which were highlighted as coming out of the study as areas for some continued work. A specific area that was quite important was identified as an opportunity was potentially a reevaluation and a redesign of what we call the acid water neutralization circuit. So that's which I'll talk about in a minute. The limestone resource are inextricably linked because it's the limestone which we use to perform that particular process operation, the acid water neutralization. But we had identified an opportunity with some pretty modest design changes to allow us to be able to deliver a product out of that would enable the recycling of copper. So copper that we are to an extent in the feasibility study showing as a loss from the system. We're actually doing some work that allows us to be able to recover that. And sort of in overall terms, sort of looking at roughly an additional 2% copper production relative to the 124,000 tons of copper, which we are showing as cathode production in the feasibility study. So that's quite exciting. We've been doing test work. That test work has shown the new flow sheet that we would look to adopt can deliver the type of outcomes that we were hoping for. And now currently our engineer of that part of the process plant, Bigram in China, they're doing some redesign work and some capital cost estimate updates for us right now. And so we're able to take that forward and be able to look at how that may fit into an updated assessment, an updated feasibility, adding that additional copper units, some of the operating costs, and also the capital cost, slight capital cost increase that we would see with the additional equipment. So it's been good, and it does help us in a couple of other operational areas. And so leading on to that, leading on from that, as I mentioned, a critical aspect which we identify in the study is the sourcing of limestone, local limestone from BKM, as a way of certainly managing the operating costs and not having to import lime products to the site. We had identified some time ago a local limestone resource, and so now we're in the process of basically moving forward to drill out and prove up that limestone resource. So the team's got access set up, they've got drill pads set up, and they're just in the process of mobilizing the rig into the site. So we should be in a position to start drilling that limestone resource, I would hope, within the next week, and we'll be able to start sharing some information from that. It's not as exciting as mineral exploration as you would like, but it certainly is a really important aspect of BKM and taking it forward. So we're fortunate to have a limestone occurrence there of significance, and that's what we're working on now to prove up with a resource drill out program. We've already taken samples of the material, proven that it works in our neutralization process. So now it's and the quality of the limestone is very good from the sampling we've done so far, which is another excellent outcome. So it's the work on the ground to do the resource drill out, which we're now pushing ahead with.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see all these little extra pieces falling into place, isn't it? I mean, you need it all to work, not just the big news of the resource drilling, but everything else needs to be there too.
Yeah. There's projects like this. You've got to start with the resource, of course, but there's a lot of other things that do come into it that are important to make a project work in a holistic sense. So that's we're really excited about. Well, the team's really excited about getting out there and doing a bit of drilling. We have internal resources that are able to operate our drill rigs, so our team's quite keen to get out there and do some of that work, which they're good at. So looking forward to that, being able to take that forward in the next few months.
So talking of the team, Darryn, what else is going on with Asiamet? Because you mentioned the project director a minute or two ago. What's happening there?
Yeah, that's right. We should be in a position to announce a project director for BKM. It is obviously a critical appointment. It's important for a whole range of different reasons, but some people might ask, why now before the project is financed? Why would you bring on a project director now before you have the finance locked in, etc. I think it's important for our stakeholders and investors to understand that the project director and the work that can be done now in terms of establishing systems, establishing contracts, establishing things to take the project forward is all activity that particularly banks, lenders are really looking to see how we're going to be approaching. What's our project execution plan? How are we going to contract this work out? What are the processes that we're going to be following? So those aspects are really important. So it's important for us to have that project director and to be able to demonstrate that we are advancing those important planning activities as we lead into closing out financing and being able to take the project forward. So we'll have an announcement on that on very soon.
Now, another important development from you guys at Asiamet is the appointment of Shore Capital, a well-known broker in the mining sector and mining finance, very experienced. Tell us a little bit about what that means to the company.
Yeah, I think I might let Mudit take this one. He's been working with ShoreCap very closely over the course of the last 2 or 3 months. I mean, it's important for us. I'll let Mudit explain a little bit further, but certainly for us moving forward and what we're looking to do, looking to grow, and as we're developing the project, I think it's important to have a good, strong broker behind us to be able to advance the things that we need to. But I'll let Mudit explain that a little bit further.
Yeah, sure. So I think this is appointment of ShoreCap as our broker. As Dan said, it's part of us kind of growing up as a company, right? Trying to increase our profile, capital market profile, to improve our investor engagement that we've been having, and then also hopefully get some research. Shore, the reason we appointed them is they have very good experience of helping growth stage mining companies. We've seen them do that in the past, and we think that they can be a great partner to kind of help us increase our presence, capital markets presence, and help just get our story out there and speak to more investors as we go forward. So we are working closely with them now that they've been formally appointed to come up with a plan, and hopefully, the next few months we'll be able to do some more engagement. And then, the other thing to mention is they've also appointed a research analyst who's quite credible in the mining space. So hopefully, we can leverage that as well and get some coverage going forward.
It'll be interesting to see what that analyst that you mentioned says about the copper price, because obviously that's a key and fundamental factor to the future of Asiamet. What are your thoughts at this point, Mudit? I mean, they've been strong, haven't they, copper prices in recent weeks and months? Do you feel that this is a favourable overall economic context that you guys are operating in?
Well, absolutely. I mean, copper, if you read the news, right, is in vogue, and it's copper has been spoken about for a long time, and that it's not had its day, but I think slowly people are starting to recognize the importance of copper in the context of electrification, of the the renewable shift to renewable energy, so on and so forth. So and any forecast, if you see in terms of demand supply forecast, everyone expects a huge deficit as we get closer to the end of this decade. So starting in the next couple of years, the demand is expected to outstrip supply. There's not enough supply coming. There's not enough investments happening in new mines. So against that backdrop, and that's probably the reason why the copper price has remained quite stable over the last kind of few months, or even a year or so, while some of the others have been quite volatile. And all the forecast, if you see the expectation of the price is expected to keep going up in the next few years. As we stand today, the LME price is around $4.50 per pound, and then the US price is now $5.50. Now that there are specific reasons why the US price is much higher, but overall the pricing seems to be very, very robust. So, in that context, when there's a lack of supply coming, I think BKM definitely is very well positioned, because if we are entering production, and hopefully will enter production by the time we finish construction, in a very, very positive and secular kind of positive trend in the copper market. So yeah, definitely excited. I think the timing is great, and copper is something where more and more people are taking note of. So that's definitely interesting.
I think also just sort of touching on something Mudit mentioned as well. I mean, from a supply side perspective, it is, it's increasingly challenging bringing new copper projects to market. It is there's multiple stories around about the time frames now being taken to to be able to deliver new projects, particularly new copper projects. The generally larger copper projects are in challenging jurisdictions. There's a whole range of challenges with bringing new projects onto market. We have advanced BKM, continue to do work and bring it to a point where being able to bring a new copper project into production, before the end of, within the next 2 to 3 years, I think is going to put us in an excellent time frame to meet that surge in demand requirements, when supply is still really well constrained. So yeah, really, really excited about where BKM is. It is a stage one. It is a stage one project. It's how we picture that, and certainly the potential upside, even just within the existing BKM resource. We are only extracting a fraction of that resource and the other resources that we have on KSK, potentially Butong. As a company, in terms of our company-wide resources, I think it's really really exciting to be taking the business forward in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, let's as we draw this to a close, let's just tick off a couple of bullet points about BKM. Zero back in on BKM to finish. I mean, so you mentioned a few points there, Darryn and Mudit too, about the broader upside of BKM and the fact that it's sort of fairly well advanced. What do you think are the sort of other main bullet points that we ought to bear in mind as investors and interested parties in Asiamet?
Yeah, I'll touch on a couple, and then Mudit will probably have an additional few from myself. But we're taking a project, BKM stage one, heap leach, well understood technology, heap leach, SXEW, that process path is well understood. This isn't the first feasibility study we've done, understand that, but we have learned, we've learned a lot about this deposit, learned a lot about the resource, and our approach to how we develop it has been honed over over a period of time. We strongly believe that the path we're taking forward now, in terms of the stage one project and how that helps preserve value for future development, I think is really important. And there's some really exciting technologies which are being presented to the copper to the copper industry over the course of the last couple of years, particularly around improving heap leaching in more difficult sort of copper mineralogies. And I think some of those are going to be potentially directly applicable to BKM. So having a path forward to improving the outcome of even our stage one, but then looking at the options for subsequent stages, I think is really important. So we have the potential for a really long life asset here, based on even on the current resources we have, but notwithstanding the prospectivity across the broader KSK contract of work. We have 40,000 hectares of contract here, and a number of other areas that we know have mineral occurrences and that would be worthy of doing exploration in the future.
Thanks, Dan. And just I think from my side, what I'd like to kind of summarize is on the financing side, probably that we are progressing both the strategic engagement and the debt side, keeping us extremely busy. We spoke about the strategic equity or the strategic investor front. On the debt side, perhaps worth mentioning, that process is of course also ongoing. We released an announcement that it kickstarted in June. The diligence is happening. We've actually expanded that list since we spoke a few months ago with the investors. So that's moving along. Although there is a lot of interplay between the debt process and the equity process or the strategic investor process that we've kicked off. So we are managing that interplay and moving both along together, and hope to provide the idea being we want an optimal funding package that helps fund the development of the phase one of BKM. And we look forward to providing updates on both the strategic investor and the debt process in due course.
Yeah, I'll be interested in those updates. Perhaps to close us out, Darryn, you could perhaps just summarize the news flow that you think Asiamet is going to be providing investors in the markets with in the coming months as we move into the second part of 2025.
Sure, Alistair. And as Mudit's alluded to, I mean, we'll be able to present news flow with respect to the financing aspects, both the debt and the equity. So I think there'll be some good news flow which will be coming out of that. From our operational optimization work, we'll certainly be sharing information around certainly the limestone work we're doing. Let's say the appointment of our new project director, and also the outcomes of being able to formally put forward the outcomes from the work that we've been doing on the flow sheet optimization as well. There's potentially a couple of other things which we're working on, but certainly I think there's some good news flow between now and certainly over the course of this quarter, coming in towards the end of Q3 and into Q4.
Well, we look forward to watching you guys move forward, more progress on the ground and with the financing. It's been great to talk to you both today. Thanks very much, Mudit, Goenka and Darryn McClelland. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Alistair. Appreciate it. And we'll try not to make it so long between the next discussion.
Anytime, Darryn.
Excellent. Thank you.